First of all, it's a Monday, which means, well, it was the first weekend that you could have guests in your garden or meet friends in a park. However, unless you've got a carport, the weather definitely got in the way. But the rain didn't stop people from protesting for Black Lives Matter. Dentists have also reopened today, and test and trace is now being used widely to reduce infections. But in terms of the epidemic, where are we now, and what do we need to happen next? Well, as ever on a Monday, let's catch up with Dr. Duncan Robertson from Loughborough University. Duncan, morning again.
Morning, Ben.
So where are we? Because there's been a sort of a gentle opening up this weekend, which I'm sure lots of people will have enjoyed one way or the other. But where does it mean for the infamous R number and so on?
Well, I think if you look at the sort of graph of cases at the moment, we've definitely got over the peak, and we're at a relatively low point at the moment, and we're sort of staying relatively constant. And in a way, that's a good thing. I mean, obviously, we want to completely eradicate the disease. It's interesting that, say, New Zealand has just come out and said that they've got rid of the disease entirely, as far as they're aware in that country. So we would like that to go down to zero. But of course, as you mentioned, people are meeting up more and more, and there's the risk that the number of infections goes up. So we're looking at this R value, and that's sort of becoming quite critical now in terms of how it goes on. So we're about this around one, but not quite sure where.
So, and one is the crucial point, isn't it? Trying to keep it below one.
That's right, exactly. So I think the latest statement from the government said that R is between 0.7 and 0.9. But actually, there's some other sort of evidence that's come out from the Medical Research Council and Cambridge University, which is saying the R value is around 0.9 to 1, and in some cases that's actually over 1, as far as their best estimate of that is. So in the northwest, the southwest, it's just above 1, but in the Midlands, I think their estimate is 0.9. So in a way, that if you look at the Midlands in isolation, we would expect the number of cases to go down. But of course, as more and more people mix, and as more and more people have these barbecues in their gardens, and demonstrations happen, people go to the beach, this number is perhaps going to increase, and then we need to know what to do if it does sort of start getting out of control.
What's the? I mean, I guess epidemiologists and so on are concerned anyway by the numbers. But at what point do we need to worry? Does it matter if it goes over 1 for a bit? Is that a price worth paying to try to open the taps and get the economy running again?
Well, this is the balance I think that the government is trying to get right, or trying to do. I'm not quite sure what they're doing, but let's assume they're trying to balance the economy and balance the epidemic. And I think, from the medic's point of view, I think Jonathan Van Tam, the Deputy Chief Medical Officer, used this phrase that, the epidemic is like a kind of coiled spring that's in this box, and if you open it a bit too much, it'll sort of hit you in the face. You mixing the metaphors, but it's very difficult to get the genie back in the bottle once it's out in the community again. So that's why it's so critical to get this right. And I think there are lots of things happening in terms of opening up this lockdown, and therefore it'll be very difficult to know which is the one or the combination that has caused this R value to go up, if it does go up. So for example, testing and trace might become more useful when it is more in the is a little bit better developed.
And just how soon will we know if, as we know, large gatherings over the weekend in protest? Some of those gatherings have been done using as strict as they can social distancing measures. You see lots of people wearing masks and so on. Also, we've seen photographs of for example, Durdledore beaches just crammed with people. How long will that take to feed through the system?
Well, normally it takes a couple of weeks for people to start presenting in hospital, and then people will either get better or not, sort of in a couple of weeks after that. So, we saw various things happening. For example, the VE Day parties that happened. As you say, people going to the beach. And the protests over the weekend and in the last couple of weeks. So we would expect to see something in the next couple of weeks. But don't forget, on one side, we've got a number of care homes, cases coming down, and that's sort of levelling off. And perhaps we've got a force of infection from these people meeting that's going the other way. So it's kind of difficult to work out what's going to happen next. But, I think the government needs to be quite clear that if something does happen, there's a policy or, a strategy in place to get that back under control.
And where do we stand, just finally, where do we stand on either some sort of therapeutic drug regime or in a vaccine?
Well, I think the vaccine, we're still, I think the optimists would say it by the end of this year, but I think we're still going to clinical trials there. And in terms of therapeutics, there's still some tests and trials that have been going on. I mean, it's, there's this a paper in the Lancet, last week, which was basically saying I forget how you say it. This is terrible. The thing that the president wants, anyway.
Call it.
That's the technical term. Yes, exactly. But that's seen as hasn't been very, very successful. And I think the trouble is that it's quite difficult to get lots of trials on people going on. And that's why, you talk about the vaccine, that's why the Oxford group have had to actually go to Brazil and actually try and, think about it there where the prevalence is higher. So one of the kind of, if it can be a bad thing of getting the epidemic under control, means you can't do quite so many tests. So, but we're at this sort of low point at the moment where, sort of what happens next. And it's going to be very interesting to watch over the next 2-4 weeks.
OK, Duncan, we'll talk more next week. But in the meantime, thank you.